Welcome back, everybody, to College Hockey Mouth. And on this edition of our coverage, we are going to be talking about the upcoming CHS European trip overseas to France. The All Stars are making their treks back into the European regions. And Devin Serra joined alongside Danny Bohm. We are pleased to welcome onto this edition the Commissioner of College Hockey South, Kyle Nell. Kyle, welcome to College Hockey Mouth. So happy to catch up with you.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me.
So much planning has gone into the last weeks, the last month, heck, the last couple of years. I know you guys were so proud of the success you guys had a year ago with this trip. So inform the people what is going on with the Europe trip and give us some of the news on it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, as you said, we went to Europe last year, had a lot of fun, learned some things and built on it, or wanted to build on it for this upcoming trip. And so there's been a lot of behind the scenes work. We've had to pivot locations multiple times, but finally, I'd say at the 11th hour, we were able to land on traveling to France, which is super exciting. We've got 4 games lined up, kind of all over France. Last year when we were in Graz, Austria, we were kind of in the same place. We were supposed to get a 4th game in Munich. Unfortunately, that didn't pan out. But being in the one city, it had its perks, but also you want to be able to travel and explore, different regions of the country. And so this year, we will be flying into Paris, which is pretty exciting in itself to be flying into such a major city like that. May do some sightseeing and some exploring there. And then our first game is in Rouen, which is about an hour 15, hour 20 outside of Paris. We'll play the Rouen Dragons. And then what was important this year, based on feedback, talking to players, was making sure that not only obviously playing competitive games. Last year, I think we had a game that was 19-1. That we won. So, we wanted to make sure we were getting some caliber games in, but also mixing in, time off. We want to be able to have fun and explore. And so we'll start in Rowan. We will then end up in Strasbourg on the complete opposite side of the country. We'll play 2 games there. And then we kind of make our trek back towards the Paris area. We'll be in Amiens, which is about 2 hours north of Paris. So 4 games against 4 really good teams. So super excited to see what this year will entail.
So you've got a mixture of teams and spots here, right? You talked about Rowan, Strasbourg. So tell people what goes into scheduling these games and how you're looking at those strength of opponents. Are these players that are collegiate, age-wise similar? Are they skill level? Like what goes into that and what level are we going to see against the College Hockey South European All-Stars?
Yeah, it's I'd say when trying to put this trip together, that was probably the most challenging thing, right? We can say we want to go to this country or this country and try to make it happen. Obviously, the important thing before we start, booking flights and booking hotels, et cetera, is lining up the opponents. And so, um, you know, 3 of the teams are, similar age of our, of the players that are going. They're basically the top. This is the top tier U20, so U20 elite league. And so I've been trying to follow along where they are in the standings, and they're all kind of in the mix. And so it should be really good. The nice thing is um, the one game we did end up losing last year was kind of a mix. It was the top team, and it was the Graz Academy A team, and they mixed in a few former pro players. In fact, there was a former ECHL player on the team. We ended up losing 4-3. It was a very good back and forth game. The goalie we played was phenomenal. And so I'm hoping that, these teams, the games will be closer and be good competition. One of the teams we are playing in Strasbourg, Hockey Strasbourg, they have 2 teams. One's their U20 team. One is their what they call D3. So basically U25 team. So we'll get to see both teams, not back to back. We'll play one on the 5th, one on the 7th. But it'll be super exciting just to see, again, what's that different level from an age gap moving up in the years. Obviously, we do have a few players who have been around for a little bit older. but it should be really good. But yeah, finding teams. Um, it was a little bit of a challenge, but hockey community is small, and once you start reaching out to, you put feelers out there for the different programs. And what's nice is, I've been talking to the presidents of these these organizations, and coaches, and they know other coaches, and just being able to kind of spell out, hey, this is what we did last year. This is kind of what we want to build on. This is how many games we're looking for. This is the caliber that we're bringing. Do you know anybody? And so it kind of spread like that. We actually had two more teams who also wanted to play, but part of getting feedback from last year from the players was, okay, what's that fine balance of how many games versus how many games off? And on your days off, what do you want to do? Is it more sightseeing? Is it more? We went skiing last year. We do have that on the books again this year. So maybe Tommy Marvin won't be the worst skier. He's not coming on the trip this year, but he was the worst skier last year. We gave him a hard time for that. But yeah, it'll be good. You know, finding that happy balance. We had four games lined up, a couple of the teams that wanted to play too, and it was just really trying to find that mix of, all right, what's too many versus how much travel. um, Paris, or Rowan to Strasbourg is 5 hours, and the Strasbourg to Amiens is 5 hours. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on the buses, but again, that's um, you're in another country, you get to see the different country, get to see the countryside, get to see different cities, and I think that's what I'm excited about the most.
Yeah, and we'll get to the roster breakdown here in a little bit, but I've been able to see the other side of it a touch. Um, what were some of the other locations you were looking into for this potential Europe trip? I understand there were a few other countries.
Yeah, so we actually started. The first goal, and never know, maybe it's next year that we end up going there, or the year after, was doing a Scandinavian tour. Sweden, Finland, potentially. And unfortunately, the other piece that we kind of run into, and don't get me wrong, our players are technically on a break as well. These teams are still playing during this time, and when this level, it's a little bit different than obviously playing at college, right? Or playing at the university. So we're just playing on the weekends. These teams are playing all throughout the week, like a junior team, right? And so when they have a break, all their players go home. And so when we were trying to target Sweden, the dates just didn't align. Unfortunately, it was one of these where if we wanted to make it work, we had to travel December 26th through January 5th, and trying to shift the dates that much, just I'm already fighting leaving, having the players come back and leave on New Year's Day, um, as opposed to, hey, we're going to leave the day after Christmas, and then we're going to also spend New Year's abroad. So kind of made that executive decision that just wasn't going to work. And then the other one was obviously Switzerland. Actually was moving forward. We were actually going to do a Switzerland Italy tour, and then unfortunately games kind of got shuffled around in the league that we were going to play a lot of the teams in, and so we last second had to pivot to France. But the teams we've been talking to, the individuals we've made connections with and everything, have been super hospitable. It's been really nice to work with them so far, and super excited to see what we can do here in a couple weeks.
Danny referred to it a moment ago. This roster you guys have is the best of the best. And I know sometimes it's based on availability and who can actually go and wants to. I think you got the best of some of these players. You look at the ranks of the M2 Tampa. You have a diverse squad with M2 and M3. So give us your consensus about the overall picture of the roster and the structures and what you guys were intending when you built this roster.
Yeah, of course. Obviously one of the biggest things is trying to, there's a cost to it, right? As much as we want to be able to cover the cost of every player going, there's still some cost for the players to be able to make a trip like this. And obviously it's the time commitment too. The nice thing, at least picking this time frame, we're not fighting with players having to fully come back for school. There are a few universities that come at later half in the time that we're gone, that technically their classes start, so that's also a consideration. But our goal originally was to take two teams. You know, just being able to go on this trip last year and just again getting the feedback, it was a once in a lifetime trip for a lot of these players. And, we want to be able to offer this experience to all of our players, right? But we recognize we can't take 45 teams worth of players and have every school come over. But we ended up, based on availability, landing with one team. When we kind of invited out players to say, hey, we want to be able to invite you on this trip. We the first position that kind of filled really fast was our goaltenders. And when we had to slim it down to one team, it's not a fun conversation to say, hey, unfortunately, we are going to go with one team, and so we couldn't take 6 goalies. But maybe next year. Again, our plan this year we have plenty of interns coming, staff members coming, multiple photographers, videographers. We are going to stream all of these games, and so I'm hoping that just with the visibility and the amount of extra coverage that we will be doing for this trip, that even more players want to get involved. And I will say, I know that our women's teams and women's players are itching to be able to do a trip like this. So you never know. Maybe next year it's a men's and women's team, depending on location, if we can find. But super excited again, just trying to document as much of it just to build the excitement. And we've got 5 returning players, which is exciting. And I'm sure that they will get more this trip too to make it. Who knows? Maybe they make a third. If they're selected for the next trip.
Is there anything you want to announce about those returning players at this point, or are they going to figure that out?
Yeah, I can announce it. I kind of shared it. I shared with one player. In fact, I kind of I forget what I reached out to him for, but I wanted it to be a surprise, and I guess this will hopefully they're listening. Hopefully they're watching here, trying to learn a little bit more about the trip, because this will be the surprise for them. But this year we are going to have captains. We didn't do that last year, and part of what when you play an international game, you're exchanging a gift before the game, and we didn't have a main captain per se. Obviously, all these players are leaders on and off the ice, and so to say, hey, this person's a captain versus this person, going the second year and having returners, it made it a little bit easier to say, hey, we're going to put the C on your jersey. And so I'll start with our assistant captains. I thought it would be fitting to have Cole Valise from the University of Tampa M2 as an assistant captain. He is a returner. Trace Cowart from the University of Tampa M3 as an assistant. And normally you have one captain, 2 assistants. We decided we'll take it a little bit further, and we're also going to give an A to Rocco Bruno as well as Kyle Meyer. So a little different having 2 goalies, but again, them returning, getting an A, again, them having gone on this trip before, help guys out, make sure they're staying on task and arriving when we're getting on the bus, etc. But our captain this year will be none other than Will Marshall from Florida Southern.
Big
Our
news.
mock
Producer Gavin, beaming with excitement over there. Our Florida Southern man. I think that's a really cool thing to recognize these players that went on the trip last year. And yeah, what a cool thing for Will Marshall to be the captain of this squad of a bunch of really talented players.
Yeah, I called him again. I can't remember what I was asking him about the trip. It may have just been, hey, we're trying to coordinate, right? There's a lot of coordinating of when people are arriving, to the airport, because obviously we have all their gear. But I said, hey, I thought about surprising them at the airport, have them pull the jersey out and kind of get a reaction. But I told him on the phone, and he was super appreciative and excited. So yeah, he obviously puts the work in for Florida Southern, and he was a very integral piece, not just in last year's trip, but also we did the All-Star Challenge 2 years ago in Fort Lauderdale, where we played the other conferences, and his line with Jake Penetrante and Michael Wall kind of put them, I'd say kind of put Florida Southern in a lot of people's minds. Obviously, both of them were stellar players together with Michael Woll and Will Marshall, but he's just been a constant force to be reckoned with all throughout the season, and was a big piece for the team last year. So thought it was fitting.
I'm just proud of the fact that the podcast bump came to fruition and that we got a captain and a former guest on the pod. So thank you for that. And congrats to everybody on the announcements. Hey, we know that people are so excited to watch this. So go into the details of what the broadcast is going to look like, when we can find the games, where they can find the games. You mentioned some of the opponents, but can people find this at a reasonable time considering you're on the European coast there?
Yeah. That was one of the I would say struggle. I would say struggle. Maybe a little bit disappointing pieces last year was, we were told the games would be streamed. Obviously, we have a ton of parents that didn't make the trip last year and wanted to be able to watch the games. Right? Hey, my son's halfway across the world playing hockey. I want to be able to watch. And unfortunately, last year, you were playing at 10, 11 in the morning there. So it's 3 and 4 in the morning back home. And I think one was at 8 a.m. So it was like 2 a.m. in the morning. And so one, it didn't pan out to be able to stream, but just not the best times to watch. The nice thing about all of these games is that they're reasonable times. Our first game's at 5:40 local time. So the quick math there, that's 11:40 a.m. So our first game on the 3rd is 11:40 a.m. Game's going to be streamed on the College Hockey South YouTube. Our very own Danny here is making the trek over with us. He's going to be helping stream the games with Charlie Serafian and Louis DiPaolo as well, calling the games. So game one on the 3rd at 5:40 or 11:40 a.m. Game two on the 5th is going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. local time there. On the 7th, same thing, 7 p.m. local, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And then our final game on the 8th is going to be at 1:35 p.m. Eastern time. So, prime time game times in France, the 7 o'clock hour. But it also means that folks at home can watch as well.
I'm proud of the fact that Danny here is going to get to call another one where, Charlie's been our buddy at College Hockey Playoffs, College Hockey South Playoffs. Like, we've been the dream team. And so I'm so jealous that I get to not be a part of that. But I'm just more proud of the fact that you get to consider those guys some of the best that you guys have in your arsenal. I know Louis DiPaolo, too, does a great job over at Embry-Riddle. So excited to hear a lot of that news. Last thing I guess we'll ask you about this Europe trip, what are, some of the goals you guys set out, obviously to win these games, but, is there more to that you want these players to get out of it? And ultimately, if you walk away from this trip, what is the one thing that makes this a success?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to be able to grow and build on every event. And, like I've mentioned before, the feedback from the players last year was very positive. Obviously, we didn't get the 4th game. That didn't pan out. But all in all, they had a blast. Again, you're getting to experience a different culture. Obviously, fingers crossed there's no hiccups or any issues, but obviously that comes with trying to you don't have boots on the ground, right? You're not planning it with like you've been there before. So there's some unknown to this, which can be a little uneasy, but I think from a success standpoint, obviously you want to walk in and out of each game with the win. You want to go 4-0. You want to bring College Hockey South to 6-1 in international play. That would be pretty exciting. No, the hockey is the biggest piece of it, right? Like that's what we're there for. For me, it's about creating an experience that lasts a lifetime. I know it sounds corny and cheesy, but we do this for the players, for them to be able to experience something that maybe they'll never ever be able to experience. One of the players last year was like, "Hey, look, I'm thinking about going to play in Europe, and this would be a great kind of stepping stone to see if it's something that's even possible for him to do." And so ultimately, yeah, you want to win the games, but that's just a plus. Again, we want to be able to provide an experience that they can look back on in 10 years, 15, 20 years and say, hey, that was a time in my life. And, a lot of these players, let alone being able to study abroad or even leaving the country outside of maybe going to Canada or go to Mexico for vacation, to say, hey, I was able to play games in Europe while I was in college. That's the experience. And again, being able to, that bonding with players that you don't ever get to play with. You always play against them. It's always pretty cool to hear that, hey, these players hated each other before coming, and then all of a sudden they're on a line together, sharing a room together, on a bus for hours together, on a flight next to each other for hours, that they become super close. And next thing you know, you're just hearing that they're staying in touch afterwards. So the experience, the relationships that are created, that to me is what's the positive piece of this, besides just winning games.
So, Kyle, we've talked about the European expectations and the All-Stars. Well, what you and this conference have done the last couple of years is not just create All-Stars in your own ranks, but throughout the nation, throughout the ACHA. We've seen the success paramount in the transition to ACHA. You've got 6 M3 teams within the top 25. All 3 M2 teams are in the top 20 of the region and competing for a spot. And now a women's team ranked within the top 10, the Southeast region of Women's Division II. So talk to us about the growing success you've seen out of the conference, some of the things that you're most proud of, and the efforts that everybody's put together to put the nation on display of College Hockey South.
Yeah, it's a little surreal. Obviously, when we moved from a different league, where we had success, right, sweeping the men's division back-to-back years. Falling a little short in the women's side both of those years. But I was a little nervous, and I think I mentioned this to Danny and others at the beginning of the season, that, when that first rankings came out or was about to come out, I was nervous. What the talent and kind of the results that the teams in this conference are putting up, does that actually mean anything in the eyes of the ACHA? And we've been fortunate to have early success. We're halfway through the season, and I couldn't be prouder of the teams and how well they're doing this year. Obviously, we're beating up on each other too, and so that can kind of hurt as well. But to see a team like MTSU 2 years ago not even make it because of other things, semantics, right? And they're on the outside looking in, to then last year losing to a CHS team and getting knocked out, to then now they look incredible. And know that of the 3 teams that we have, at least in M2, that they're in that top 16. They're just battling out the rest of the season, hoping to punch their ticket to regionals. Obviously, they know when they get to regionals, job's not done. They got to win 2 games at regionals in order to make it to nationals. And so it's nice. I think for the longest time, and this goes back to kind of when I was playing, that, people saw hockey in the South and was like, yeah, it's like, we're not playing them. They don't deserve the recognition, or, it's not good hockey. And it has come a super long way. And just to see the success that these programs have had, and now teams are like, hey, yeah, we want to come play you. Being able to see different teams as opposed to the same teams over and over and over again, I think is a plus. And, couldn't be prouder of, obviously, first off, you all putting this together. You pitched the idea and it's just like, hey, take it, run with it. It's been awesome to see. And, but just the amount of work that people put in, behind the scenes too. We've got a massive team, and none of this would be possible without you all. And obviously, the more visibility we put on the programs, the more people, the more players, students, prospective students decide that, hey, I want to go to one of these teams. I like hockey in the South. It's warmer. I don't have to trek through snow and play in a Northeastern team or a team out West. I can enjoy the heat and the sun for majority of the year. I'm sitting here and it's not 19 degrees outside right now where I am. So, and I still consider myself in the South, but yeah, it's been surreal, and I'm just proud of the effort that everyone's put in. And yeah, to your point, the past 4 years, that I've been in this role, it's kind of crazy to think where we came from and to where we are now. So it's only a start. See where we go from here.
One thing I noticed looking through the roster and doing my research there is, you have an expectation that these players that are on the Southern schools are the snowbirds, and they come up from the Northeast down to these rosters. But there's a fair share of kids that are from Florida and Georgia. And I thought that was something that was really cool to see, that not only is it the Southern schools where hockey is growing, but in the South in general. There's a lot of kids from Florida on this roster. There's kids, well, the Kennesaw State kids are all from the Georgia area, which I'm proud of. But I thought that was something that's really cool to see. I think looking at what the Florida teams in the NHL have done probably have a great deal to do with that. But I mean, what we're doing with CHS and the eyeballs we've been getting this year and over the past few years, it's very, very exciting. And I think this Europe trip has the opportunity to, you know, explode that even more.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Obviously, the success of the Lightning, obviously the Panthers as well, has been super awesome to see. And just, even when Tampa won and Florida won, Miami won, FAU won, like even getting the recognition from the NHL teams, congratulating those teams, I think that's a huge testament to what the teams have been doing, and obviously, we've been doing too, just to kind of help shed the light and promote these teams. At the end of the day, that's all I care about, is one, the growth of hockey, in particular hockey in the South, but also, what can we do as a team, right? You all, Danny, from a communication standpoint, what can we do to put more emphasis and light on these programs? Because what we do day in and day out helps put the light on the teams. That means that more potential students are wanting to go to those programs, and part of why we frankly started the prospect showcase last July. It is to get these players in front of coaches, learn more about what we do as a conference, learn more about obviously the teams and what they do and have to offer. And I think there's a lot of conferences, right, in the ACHA, and I want to be able to offer something that people look forward to, whether that is the Europe trip, an All-Star Challenge, the different tournaments that we offer too. I think it all starts now at these prospect showcases, because that, I'm hoping, in future years just continues to be a funnel for the players, not just the men, but also the women. And again, bottom line, growing the game.
One way to grow the game, and perhaps a daring idea, is to put all of your talent and showcase under one roof. You're going to try something with this group that hasn't been done, I don't think, in a long time. We're going to put all of the divisions in the Panthers Ice Den, February 26th, March 1st. What an event everyone's looking forward to. But tell people at home, what's at stake for those teams. I've heard 12 teams for M3. We're going to have all of the M2. We're going to have the women's division on showcase. What's at stake for those teams, and how does all of this madness come together to make what is going to be a great College Hockey South playoff?
Yeah, the playoff weekend is going to be sheer madness. I'm going to just say it's a mini nationals. When we've done playoffs in the past and other conferences do playoffs and everything, right? You're limited to the amount of ice time, right? How much available ice, how many sheets of ice. And in the South, we of course are very limited. We can't go up to Boston and there be an 8-plex, or St. Louis, or other large venues that have 4 or 5, 6 sheets. We have 3, right? Obviously, Wesley Chapel has multiple. Advent Health has multiple. Ice Den has multiple. And so what I wanted to do, we've been fortunate having the partnerships with other venues in the past, going to Athens last year, being in Huntsville, going to Clarksville, Lakeland. We've had, the D3 playoffs there before, a couple years. But, last year we had I kind of tested out what would D2 and D3 look like, or we did it last year. We had men's and one and our D1 and women's together in Athens. And then we had D2 and D3 down in at the ice den. And just having all of those games, there were more D2 and D3 under one roof. It really created this atmosphere that it's very hard to recreate with just a small number of teams. And so I asked AJ and Ashley, I said, hey, look, this is gonna be wild. We want to come back. We love it. Could we do them all? Obviously, we had some changes in the offseason, so a number of games. We didn't need as many, but over the span of February 20, is it 6th? I'm gonna
Yes.
Yeah, February 26th. Sorry, lots of dates.
I
The
know.
span of February 26th to March 1, there are 41 games that are going to occur that weekend. So, to your point, we're going to have all of M2, 12 teams for M3. We're going to have 6 of our ACDC teams and then 8 women's teams. So, buckle up. There's, at least for you all, right, broadcasting wise, it is going to be nonstop from start to finish, all 3 sheets. I think there's a total of, I'm just going to say, 5 hours that entire weekend that we don't have a game going on. So there are games that are going to start as early as 8 a.m. and go till midnight. So don't worry, we'll have breaks. You're not going to be calling games back to back to back to back unless you absolutely want to. But it genuinely will be, I'd like to say, mini nationals. There you can walk from one sheet. We've got games staggered, so fans that are in attendance, players that are in attendance, they can, in between games, if they just finished theirs, they won, they want to go check out who they could potentially be playing next, they can go to the next sheet, or hey, they can check out a women's game or a different game that's going on, and again, really create an atmosphere that is going to be very hard to replicate. So I'm super excited. All hands on deck, though.
Yeah, so we've had to think of it from the logistical standpoint, which is obviously a little stressful. And we're responsible for handling everything to make sure it flows smoothly. But if you just think about it from like the outside looking in, like ding to dong, there's hockey on just about any sheet of ice in that building. So Friday and Saturday, those days in particular, it's like the first 2 days of March Madness where you but instead of changing the channel, you can just go to a different rink, and it's just like nonstop. One game ends, okay, get off the ice, let's go. Let's get the other going. So for the people that want to watch and want to soak up that atmosphere, there is no shortage of it. It's going to be pretty nonstop.
No, yeah, absolutely. And honestly, like, then you start thinking, okay, what are over the last few years, right, that we've gone to nationals, what are things that we can implement or bring in that kind of bring that next level for, not just the fans, but also the players? So is it a hospitality room? Is it, getting the Florida Women's Hockey League involved and getting some, youth programs involved? Because again, to the point here is that this is the best hockey in the South. And so obviously there's some new juniors, there's a new juniors team out of Coral Springs area. And so inviting them out and saying, hey, look, this is good hockey and this is your perfect opportunity to find out what's next and to talk to players, talk to coaches, and get more involved. So again, any way we can highlight and showcase the best product on the ice, that's what we're hoping to do and have it all in one place. So it continues to build the excitement.
We had Nathan Walker on last week from Florida Gulf Coast, and in the process of joining CHS, he said they bounced it around in their group chat, and it was a unanimous yes. But the leading factor and wanting to join the conference was an event like this, so they could go to a playoff and be a part of a tournament that created that kind of an atmosphere and is close to them. it's super local and attainable for them. It's not a crazy travel day or anything like that. Um, and adding them has added another level of excitement too. So um, yeah, it continues to grow. Super super excited, even though it will be a little bit of a logistical headache. But hey, it is what it is. Got to make it happen.
Yeah, when we as a conference, when the teams decided to make the move back to the ACHA this offseason, obviously the first thing that's in your mind is you've got this other program that's been, in our neck of the woods the entire time, and it's had a very great established program in Florida Gulf Coast. And, for this season, it did make sense for the M2, for in their eyes, it did make sense for the M2 team to join. Obviously, we welcome them with open arms when they, if they decide to make that change and come in. But obviously, the M3 team did decide to join, and I'm excited to see. Obviously they've played USF, they've played Alabama. I'm excited to see add them into the mix. And to your point, as of standings right now, they're in the mix. They're at the moment in the hunt for a spot in playoffs. So I think it'll be exciting. And who knows, maybe next year we give them a bid or give them an invite to Battle at the Beach. It's another Florida team.
Ooh, little teaser
Hey,
there, guys.
don't
Little
spoil too
teaser.
much news now. We've already dropped a bunch of news. We know more things are coming. That's the great part, is that the expansion continues, and I'll leave that to another date for you to really go into detail with. So we talk on this podcast about the growth of the game, and we love highlighting the special parts of that. We also know that we take the game serious. It's not just club hockey down here. It's a serious competitive level, and a lot's at stake. We know the women's side and the M3, allegedly these games are going to count towards some of those rankings. So give us what is at stake for maybe the M3 side. A College Hockey South championship in its own would mean the world to any of those programs among the four divisions. But what's really at stake here, especially on the M3 side?
Yeah. Obviously, with the transition to the ACHA, we had teams that were D2 within AAU, moved to M3. And so we have 18 M3 teams. And so one of the concerns was, hey, if we kept it at 8 games, you're now leaving some very high caliber teams on the outside looking in. And the nice thing about when the games, like the final cutoff for games to count, typically, or at least what we've been used to in the past, is our playoffs have always fell past that window. So when we were in AAU, that it was middle of February, and so the games never, as much as it's the internal pride, hey, we're the conference champions, those games didn't really have any implication on nationals. And so the nice thing about it this year for M3, M2, the cutoff, obviously they're going to regionals. They got to get through regionals, and this is either going to be a final, send off for the seniors, or it's going to be, hey, a nice tune up for any team that made it out of regionals to go to nationals. But for M3, we got 12 teams competing for potentially an auto bid. The final cutoff is March 1. So obviously we've got to be able to get the games all submitted quickly on time, for the ACHA to consider from a final ranking standpoint. But given the number of teams that we already have in, to your point, in the top 20, top 25, there's potentially an auto bid on the line. So hey, imagine being on the outside looking in, going on a Cinderella run and winning and punching your ticket that way. I think it just adds a level of excitement that, it's not just playoffs, which obviously there's pride there, but hey, there's a little extra something on at the end of this too.
I'm glad that you led with that fact that the drama is at stake, because Nationals is an event. It's a spectacle out at Centene Community Ice Center, the practice facility of the St. Louis Blues. So for all of the programs that listen to this in the M3, also women's too, should mention that it does count in that final period for them as well. It's going to mean a lot for them, and there's going to be a lot of pride to go on. I think it just adds to the level of lore that goes on with the conference.
I will share. I will share real quick though, like for the teams that are listening, outside of in formerly M1 and now M2, or D1 now M2. For M3, that trophy has not been won by the top team yet. Now, if you think about it, the top seed last year, FAU, upset, right? So, not to, scare MTSU at all, obviously, with it being in the top seat right now, but it's playoffs. We could sit here and have a conversation of who we think, based on their record or from a ranking standpoint. Oh, it's a 1 versus 8. Like, no, these games are going to be, we have an over under. There's not going to be any blowout here. They are going to be very, very competitive games. And you got to think, we have 41 games that weekend. Like I said, a mini nationals. And so I'm super excited.
Yeah, going into the season, we called the Division 3 kind of like our chaos division, basically just because of the sheer number of teams. But it feels like the disparity in level of play from the top teams to where the supposed like bubble teams, well, they are bubble teams, but the ones that are ranked 11th and 12th, it doesn't feel like it's that much. We were talking about it, I believe it was off air with Nathan Walker. Like, might see some of these top teams lose early. I don't think there's a safe matchup for anybody. Another layer of drama to add for the playoffs, which really don't need any because of the atmosphere that's going to be there.
Nope. Yeah, we've had, don't get me wrong, we've had a few blowouts, but then, I think of a USF program, right? You've got Dietz, who's just phenomenal and scoring left and right to, that team, win one game and then next you're taking a team to OT or you end up splitting a series. And so I truly think, to your point, it's going to be one of these where it whatever team decides to show up and play, and is not looking too far ahead. The nice thing is that how we're doing M3 with 12 teams, there are going to be a few teams that get a bye, and play Friday. So the 4 different play-in games on Thursday, anybody could win those.
Now, Kyle, we've had a great conversation here. Loved hearing about the European process and getting that going. Playoffs, we can go on, like you said, another hour. Last note for you personally. You've been in this role for a couple of years now, former player. You mentioned how much pride you've taken in seeing the game grow. Now, as we wrap up this year, just what do you reflect on as some of your favorite parts of in this job you've had? And what does it mean to you to continue to help a league like this grow into one of the premier conferences within the ACHA?
Obviously, the 4 years or 3.5, not fully done with the 4th year. I think truthfully, I think at the moment there's 2 pieces. It's hard to narrow it down, right? You know, I think the big moments that if I were to stop doing this today and were to look back and say, hey, this is what I'm most proud about. One would be the women's division, just kicking that off. I've got a son and a daughter. My daughter's 9, and you know, she's made a lot of connections with the players and is interested in playing hockey, and to say, hey, there is a future for you if you want to keep playing post U19, if she decides to go that route, outside of, because from a hockey landscape, right there, the game has grown so much that for all the kids out there that think it's NHL or bust, or it's the NAHL or the USPHL, or you're playing Division 1, and if you don't make those, you're not successful. That's not the case. There is very competitive hockey. There are kids at the schools today that are played Division 3 and decided, hey, I'd rather go and play here instead. And so having kind of been part of creating that, I think that is one of the top ones. Obviously, Europe is a big piece, and this trip in particular, hoping that goes very smooth. And then just again the growth. I think when I stepped in, actually tried to look at this the other day. I think there were like 13 teams or 14 or 15 teams when I stepped in the conference. And when we Last year we were up to 50. Obviously, we had some teams leave this past off season, and obviously we wish them nothing but the best, and obviously created even more teams, but or had even more teams join and be created. We're at 45 teams this year, so I think that the growth is really what I'm most proud of. It was one division. It was chaos. There wasn't room for growth. And now, last year we had D1, D2, D3 women's. Now it's M2, M3, ACDC women's. It's all about just creating an opportunity for the students, for the players. Whether again that's with Europe, whether it's an all-star challenge, whether that's just the different tournaments that have been created. I think those are the things I'm most proud about, because before it was just you're in a conference, you get a playoffs, that's it. Now there's a Veterans Cup, there is Battle at the Beach, there's Columbus Classic, there's the All-Star Challenge, there's the Prospect Showcase, there's Europe. So it's the list goes on, and yeah, just creating those opportunities. And hopefully one day, if I'm not doing this anymore, that someone is just as passionate to continue to create these opportunities for the players, for you all as students, right? Or post grad, to continue to just be a part of hockey and doing something, to give back per se, or to continue to gain the valuable experience. That's what I hope to leave, and proud of.
Well said. Thank you so much, Kamish. Great sit down. We hope you have more in the future. Good luck with the European trip. Rest up before you guys get ready to hop on those buses. And Danny, get ready, man. Get Kelly on the pod. Do what you got to do. Have fun with the social media team. Have fun the rest of the way. And thanks again, Kyle.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, guys, for having me.